right, we are talking to Michael Kearns. So happy to have you here with us in
Live
person.
in person.
So I wanted to ask you, you knew I was going to ask you an icebreaker. Favorite physical asset above the waist or most overrated actor? You can choose.
Okay, I'll do the first one.
Okay.
I think it's my face.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
we had faces then, or whatever that line is. It's just opened a lot of doors. I have to be honest about, it's privilege. It's some kind of born with privilege, but I feel lucky and that it's sort of held up,
If you are listening to this, please check us out on YouTube and see Michael's very handsome face as he describes his favorite physical asset. I love that.
Good.
No, but it's a good face,
Thank you.
And I'm sure Scotty and I talk about this a lot about there's all kinds of privileges, right? There's socioeconomic, there's right-handedness, there's also attractiveness. Height.
Mm-hmm.
Height is a big privilege. Yeah. Which you and I both know about.
I know.
Yeah.
You especially as a woman.
Yes. Well, and that's a double-edged sword sometimes.
I bet.
Yeah.
Not in my book.
No, thank you, honey. I appreciate that.
That's
No
good.
Thank you for that. I am Laura Cathcart-Robbins. This is the only one in the room. But I'm never the only one in this room because, as usual, my boyfriend, producer, and co-host, Scott Slaughter, who I call Hun, is here as well.
Hi, honey.
Hey, honey.
I love it.
Yes.
I want you to both call me honey.
Yeah,
too.
okay, we will. So this is Michael Kearns we're talking to. He is globally recognized as Hollywood's first openly gay actor, followed by an announcement on Entertainment Tonight as the first actor in Hollywood to come out as HIV positive. Michael Kearns has been a provocative and impassioned voice on the cultural and artistic landscape of America and beyond for 50 years. 50 years. In addition to teaching private and group writing classes, which I want to mention later because I know someone who took your writing class and they were very excited that we were interviewing you. Kearns is presently an artistic associate at the esteemed Skylight Theatre in Los Angeles, artist in residence at Housing Works, and artistic director of QueerWise, a spoken word collective that he founded in 2011. So welcome, Michael.
Thank you.
Welcome, Michael.
Thank you.
Before I start the interview, I always ask our guests, how do you identify?
Well, I resist this. First, I'll say that I understand totally the whys of this and that people need to have an identification. I don't feel comfortable doing it because, for years and years and years, when we were coming out in the 60s and the 70s, gay men referred to each other as her and she, and that was a real bonding kind of communication that we had. And I don't want to let go of that. So if I want to call myself she in the context of my male gay friends or whomever, then I'll call myself she. So it feels limiting to me after all this work on so many things. And I know we have to work concurrently on, current people's needs, and I respect that. It's just I'm not comfortable with it. So I kind of don't do it. I'm he, she, they, her, me.
There you go.
Mostly me.
All of the above.
Mostly me. I like that.
Mostly me.
I'm going to use that one from here on.
You can. You can steal verbatim.
I can completely connect with that because as a Black woman who was raised in the 70s and 80s, well, 70s really, we were taught that other Black people were our brothers and sisters. And so it's such a term of endearment, that brother over there, that sister over there. And I understand exactly why it's important to, and this is why I ask our guests how they want to be identified. But I love that. I love that camaraderie. I love that bond. And so I have a little resistance in the exact same way. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So we're going to start with when you started acting, which was very early, right?
Very early. I was like 9.
9?
Yeah.
Yeah, so tell us about that. And where were you then?
I was in St. Louis
Right.
at grade school. and there was going to be this big recital, whatever, about trains, and our class was going to do Chattanooga Choo Choo, and one person in the class of 35 or whatever would be chosen. So we all had to stand up next to our desk, and the teacher's daughter came in. I can remember it as if it was yesterday, to teach us. And I'm learning the motions, pardon me, boy, is that the Chattanooga? Yeah, but very extreme, sort of overdone, exaggerated, yes, for a kid to be doing. And I just glanced around and I thought, finally, I can do something that they can't. I'm going to do this. I'm going to get it. There's no question in my mind that I knew just by glancing, sideways, that I was nailing it and no one else was. So it was bigger than that. It was much bigger because, I'd not had a pleasant childhood. So to glom onto something that made me feel so good and that I excelled at, I never turned back from that moment. And I went to my mother. This was before there was a show or anything. And then I was a hit in the show, of
course.
Doing Chattanooga Choo Choo.
Yeah.
And then I said to my mother, I want to go to acting school. Well, we're talking in the 50s in St. Louis, Missouri. A child wants to go to acting school. She looks it up in the yellow pages under dramatic.
Yes.
Which I thought, now there's a picture of me. But
under dramatic, yes.
Then there wasn't.
Right.
So there was in St. Louis, Missouri, junior theater. If you can imagine that this would exist, junior theater taught by Marian Epstein, who was an actress from New York, supposedly. In any case, she was teaching kids the method. And really what she was teaching was empathy. But she was controversial because she was taking these young kids and letting them cry and have all these emotions. I might cry, Scotty, having all these emotions.
You're safe here, man.
Yeah.
These responses, that kids could access very easily. So mostly what she taught us was to always look at other people and find out what about them is like you, not different than you.
Wow.
And that's a key to acting.
But so progressive, too.
So progressive. At 9, can you imagine learning that? And I didn't stop. You're impressionable, and you're told something like that, and it makes sense to you. I just kept doing it. She'd say, if the bus stop at the ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba, look wherever you're looking. Don't look for what's different. Look for how you connect to that person, what's similar. Well, that's empathy. I mean, in one way to define it. And the key to acting and writing, in my mind, is empathy.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I'm also just a little stuck on how mad cool your mom was in, conservative St. Louis with were you out at 9?
No. In those days, no. Maybe in my mind I was starting to be.
But she must have known that you had more flourish.
I was theatrical.
That you were theatrical.
Flourish is a good word.
I like flourish too, yeah.
And then decided that even though this was not something that was commonly done, she was going to find her son an acting school because he said he wanted to go. Yeah. That's amazing.
It was amazing. I mean, she has a lot of qualities that aren't so good. However, this was one where she took the adventure. She wasn't worried about homophobia. I'm sure it existed. And, she had to battle it for me in her own way. But I think she also sensed that this was something that would focus me.
Right.
I wasn't focused on sports. I wasn't focused necessarily on intellectual properties at school. But this, suddenly I was impassioned.
Right.
And, read plays and I just never stopped. I never stopped from that moment on. And then the teacher became very, very supportive of me and gave me free private classes because she thought that
She knew. So you mentioned homophobia, and I want to jump a little bit ahead to Chicago, where you were in theater school there. Is that correct?
I went to the Goodman School, which in late 60s, it was still one of the preeminent, it still is a very powerful school, but then there were like 3, NYU, Goodman, and we went to, and I chose Goodman. And it was I was young. They only accepted about 5 or 6 right from high school, and I was one came right from.
Wow.
Most people had some college,
Mm-hmm.
so that was somewhat of a disadvantage in that we were treated as the
Yeah.
whatever.
You were the
But
kids.
The kids.
Yeah.
But also there was just this underlying homophobia, in spite of the fact that, I mean,
In a theater school. Like, that's just baffling.
can you
to
believe
me.
it? I
No.
know, but it existed, and it existed at the level of sexual favors and, oh yeah,
Like, how do you mean?
like getting cast by sleeping with a director or a teacher who was a director. Or,
Oh, wow.
oh yeah.
Wow.
So it was pretty. It had an ick factor. I learned a lot, obviously, and a lot of this is in retrospect. When you're going through it, you're a kid. I'm a teenager still.
Yes.
I'm like, I didn't know what hit me. But in retrospect, you just see that I was not treated as my heterosexual counterparts. Because I was not hiding ever that I was gay. Some of them were hiding it and doing pretty well. That's where they put all their acting energy.
Tell me about that. Why weren't you hiding it?
I could hide it because, as I jokingly or not jokingly say, I certainly hit it on the Waltons and pulled that off at the, at
You
the
were
height
able
of
to.
America's sweetest show and most all-American.
It
I
sure was.
played a
Yeah.
completely heterosexual, in fact, hyper-heterosexual character. So it wasn't that I could not do it, as some people aren't temperamentally built to play, if they're gay, to play straight characters. I could do it. I didn't have as much interest as I did playing some part of myself.
Sure.
However, I think I resisted that notion of hiding. I was brought up around the St. Louis Municipal Opera. I would understudy some of the kid roles when they came to town. So I was around a lot of gay and lesbian people. I didn't even know the word lesbian, I don't think. But I saw couples, I saw bonding, I saw them laughing and being silly and taking me often under their wing, bring him, bring Mike, of course.
They
I was
spotted
Mike.
you.
Yeah, they spotted me.
Yeah.
And they knew that I needed that kind of reinforcement.
Sure.
So that was part of my going into Goodman. So I just wasn't comfortable with that game that people played. I found it I was right there on, and of course, gay liberation was starting to take place in the late 60s, as were, the political element of the world, feminism and
the civil
sexual
rights
liberation, and of course the civil rights. All of those things were blossoming in 68, 69. That's right when I was at school.
Right.
So I was there in a perfect time, in a way, to balance whatever homophobia was there, whatever that looked like. I was able to balance it with what was happening in the world, which was a lot of revolution and a lot of, I'm not going to take this. And I think I fell into that category. I became somewhat politicized with a small p while I was still there.
Right. Were you ever scared for your safety because you were open about it at that point in your life?
I'm sure there were, because in Chicago, there were some rough areas.
Yes.
I always forget that Bette Midler line. There's some great Bette Midler line about being Chicago is butch and blah, blah, blah. And I don't know what they do.
That's great.
But it is a butch city.
It is. Yeah.
And you have to sort of have some armor to function in that city. So I think there were times when I was afraid.
But that didn't deter you from continuing on your course?
Never.
So you get to Hollywood on September 1st, 1971.
That's right.
Tell me about
21. That. Well, I thought, under any other circumstances than the extreme homophobia that greeted me, I would have probably been in the running to be, let us just say, a movie star or a television star or something. But very quickly, I had some great initial auditions where they started speaking code to me. And again, I'm 19 or 20. I was 21. Okay. And I don't even know what they're saying.
Like what kind of code?
Like the next scene, I was auditioning to be a contract player, one of the final contract players. at Universal. They were phasing that out, but they were still hiring a few. I was being considered. So I did a scene, and the feedback was, he needs to be a little harder. Look, he's a little soft. I think they did use the word soft. That's one of their big euphemisms, still to this day.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing that, and I'm like, so I have to choose another scene. So I choose a second scene. This was so painful. All of it became. Then I became aware of what they were doing. Like, why couldn't they have they were starting to have gay content on shows in the late 60s. There was a period pre-AIDS where there was some material. But what difference did it make as long as I could? So I did a second scene. Some more Hollywoodese, some more language about can it be a more mature scene or whatever words they used, but what they were saying, and I think I finally got it on time too, was butch it up. So it was so hurtful.
Yeah.
And so, because I knew I could act, and they wouldn't be calling me back if I couldn't act. That wasn't the issue. But they wanted me to act in this conformed manner that was not me. I would only be using X amount of the cylinders, if I was cutting myself off. So I did a third scene. You do 3 scenes, which was really, this required a lot of rehearsing and work and anticipation. So that was my introduction to being a star in Hollywood. And so I think that I was ready to be cast in a play, and it was Tom Ian's The Dirtiest Show in Town. And that flipped my switch and said, you can be gay, you can be wild, you can be political, you can take off your clothes, you can be silly, and you can be political, and you can be smart. All those things were inherent in that production of Dirtiest Show.
Well, and I'm trying to think of like what gay characters did I see on television then. I remember Billy Crystal's character in Soap.
I was up for that part.
Were you?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. I remember Paul Lynde in Bewitched.
Oh, my God.
I know, but I'm
No, tell me.
And then I remember on All in the Family and the Jeffersons, they talked about it quite a bit. They were the only show that I remember
where there was
talking about
references.
bigotry, and it was pretty much hate speech, but it would be countered by, Mike or Gloria, right? They would like, you can't talk like that, but that they would talk about it. But I don't remember a lot of openly gay characters.
There were a few movies an early Frost, and then there was another
movies. Yeah, there are more of those for sure.
There were a few,
yeah.
and then there were a few features. That gently. Yeah. It was I would say that I think it was going in that direction before AIDS,
right?
And then AIDS put the
kibosh on it.
Oh my goodness!
So you had contemporaries that you were all up for the same kind of parts, and some of them were gay but were hiding it.
Yes.
And you were not.
I was not.
And you were not. So
and I was not. But that didn't help me get the part, believe me.
Right.
It hurt.
Did you got a reputation? Or no?
I had a reputation, definitely. I had a reputation as somebody who was openly gay and could act. Now, did that equal getting the part? No.
Right. No.
Not necessarily. In fact, I think that it was in the way of getting the part because they didn't want me spewing my the way any heterosexual actor would.
Yes.
They could talk about sex.
You couldn't lead with your sexuality. You couldn't follow with it. You couldn't.
I couldn't go sideways with it.
You couldn't go sideways with it.
I couldn't do anything with it.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So it was like this, not being able to breathe. And so then with Dirtiest Show, I started doing theater. And doors started opening. Not the doors that would have, I'm not a victim. I set this up. I did this all myself. I orchestrated it to a large degree. So whatever money was lost or it was gained in other ways in my life. Yeah. So I don't look at it as a tragedy. I just look at it as something that happened to me. I think my outcome is as good as anybody's.
Right. So the mainstream media, television and film in particular, at that time, they weren't ready for a no matter how talented that actor might be, an openly gay actor.
I don't think they're ready now, are they?
That part right there. But they weren't ready then. But theater was.
Yes.
Theater was. And theater welcomed you, and you were able to go there and do your thing and thrive.
Absolutely. I was really lucky for that, to go back to what I knew the best.
Yeah.
And then I started doing plays that were sort of New York plays that had premiered here. And I really started reigniting a career.
Yes.
So it was like X number of years later, but it didn't matter. It was fine.
That's wonderful. Your representation, you had an agent, manager.
All that.
Did they ever ask you to be less open about it?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
But,
they did.
but not in a mean,
Right.
not in that universal way.
Yeah.
Which was, don't harden up or whatever the words are. Harden.
Right. Yeah.
Tougher.
Yeah.
Whatever words. Maybe
Yes.
they did say harden up. But yes, so they would occasionally say, if it was a specific part,
Right.
even a gay part, they'd say, now, make sure it's not too gay. Too gay. I heard those words over and over and over.
Wow.
But they weren't necessarily talking to me directly, like saying, you're too gay. I wouldn't care if they
Right.
did, but they may have said that. But they were just warning about
Right.
the being too gay.
They
That
want it
could
big and gay, but not too much flourish.
Oh, absolutely. Not too much flourish.
Yes.
You got to be careful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Once somebody asked me in an audition, it was like for some small, stupid part, they said, could you do that in a gay accent?
Nope. Did
And
you
I
ask
said,
them?
What would that be like? Well, da-da-da-da. So I read it exactly the way I did the first time.
Did they like it then?
No, they didn't think they weren't amused either, because they knew what I was doing. In other words, I wasn't going to curtail to their homophobia or whatever, and necessarily play it. I mean, I think it's justifiable to have characters that are flamboyant.
Right.
But this wasn't one of them. Why did the waiter go taking somebody to their table have to be like, whatever? I can do it with my eyes closed, but you give me some lines,
right?
I'll do them.
Well, I can just see so many parallels between what you're talking about. And again, my own experience, I was never an actor, but I have so many Black actor friends, and they are asked to be less Black. Could you maybe wear your hair straight for your next audition? Perhaps a little less this, a little more this. And you can't be too Black, but they want you to be Black enough. And there are all these like kind of arbitrary boundaries.
And think of how those have probably changed.
Oh, yeah. But still.
They're still giving those orders.
They're still giving those orders on the DL, right? Like on whispered.
Yeah.
Just go in there. I've heard that they're looking for this type, so try not to be too much of this. And it's infuriating.
It's and hurtful.
And hurtful.
Very hurtful.
Yeah.
Because it only takes X number of those experiences to destroy a person.
Right. And they're assuming what we consumers will accept. We won't accept, you if you don't have the right accent for this, the right accent, I'm putting that in quotes.
Right.
We won't accept her if she's wearing her natural hair as a beauty. We need her to have straight hair in order for her to be a
beautiful.
Beauty. Yes. Yeah. And but the fact is that we're not educating our consumers so that they can accept.
No, we're retarding them.
We are retarding them. Thank you for that. That is the proper use of that word.
Yeah.
So now I want to talk about you were at Conrad's Coffee Shop, I believe, in Glendale.
Wow.
And I was watching you.
I believe you.
I think that is, you tell me if I'm wrong, that's where you first heard about the AIDS epidemic. Was there a friend visiting from Chicago, right?
No, he was from Chicago and
Right.
had moved here after
he moved
I did.
here. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, tell me that story.
I could go to the place in the restaurant. I've been there hundreds and hundreds of times, but I could go to that booth. I was just incredulous. He was telling me about this gay cancer. I think it was then GRID, gay related.
Yes.
And I was just agog. Like, he knew someone who had it, and then he knew someone who I knew who had it. I was just trying to put it together, And of course, then the rumors and the way of false accusing people of things. It was S&M, it was poppers, it was, all these weird theories which held no scientific weight whatsoever. It was just somebody starting some sort of gossip.
Right.
But I then remember going to, I had a card. He was part of APLA, and I had a index card, and I wish I had that card. I don't know. Who knew that it was going to be lasting through another plague?
Yeah.
So I had this index card. It was pink, and on this index card it said APLA people or whatever. And
Wait, what's it stand for?
AIDS Project
Los Angeles. Okay.
That was the nascent moment of that organization. All the names, which were about 4 or 5, including my friend Mark, who came from Chicago, were on this card.
Oh, wow.
Of who ran the organization on an index card. Well, they became a multi-million, Elizabeth Taylor, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
So I remember carrying that and using that as my reference because I started doing some fundraising and things pretty quickly. That was early 80s, So I was one of the first who jumped onto that cause to raise money because money was needed. So, yes, and I went to visit the mutual friend who happened to be a musician who had done some work with me on a play. And seeing him, I saw a lot of horror shows acted out in front of me subsequent to that. But that initial jolt of seeing him was just beyond comprehension.
How physically different was he from the person that you knew?
Physically, very different. I mean, he had lost a lot of weight, sunken features. And the worst thing is that he was just circling his bed, very revealing metaphorically, circling his bed. And kind of, this was a common thread that people don't talk a lot about, but saying, what am I going to do? That seemed to be one of the, what am I going to do? What can I do? What can I do? What am I going to do? And just sort of literally banging his head, like against his hand. It was just inconceivable. But then you ask the question, what was he like physically? What was he like emotionally? There were similarities, and that was the thing that one had to reconcile, that even in states of dementia, people had maintained something of who they were, that you loved about them or found amusing about them. All of a sudden some spark would shine through.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
And then so at that time, you were not HIV positive. You did, or were you HIV positive?
No, I tested at the end of the 80s.
At the end of the 80s.
And then sought advice as to whether or not I should come out about it at that juncture.
Right.
And Morris Kite, who was one of the preeminent activists, and he said, no, wait, the moment will come. So, of course, the moment comes when Brad Davis dies, and that was X number of years after Rock Hudson. I was very vocal about Rock Hudson's death, about how tragic it was that they were hiding who he was till the last minute.
I want to actually put a pin in this story because I want to talk about that. Because you did a one-man play?
Called Rock.
You had an encounter with him, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
So just
encounter's one word. I called it a dalliance, which sounds somehow Elizabethan.
I love that. So, it does sound Elizabethan, but tell me.
My sex in bathhouses with movie stars are dalliances. They're not encounters.
Oh, dear.
I'm teasing you.
Tell me about everything.
It has to be funny.
Yeah.
Well, this was the early 80s. I had an encounter, dalliance with Rock Hudson. Not so pleasant, not so unpleasant, just not what one would imagine a dalliance with a movie star is going to be. And this was 1983 Easter. Well, he could have been sick during that. Nothing happened necessarily in the dalliances that would have seroconverted me. However, I of course was thinking this will be in a show one day, which I was.
Yes.
Of course I was.
Of course you were.
Stupid.
Yeah.
And I'll be headed to podcast when I'm 90 telling this story too. So anyway, I went to a lot of lunches on the story. No, but it became the centerpiece for this show, which was completely a serious, investment, although the show had a lot of humor in it. And I started doing, trying to analyze Rock Hudson and do as much research as I possibly could. There's no there. I mean, there's not much to say about Rock Hudson. So I thought the people around him will be the way that I'll figure him out.
You mean there was just not much information?
There was scads of information, but all the same, he came to Hollywood. They changed his name. He was gay. Everybody knew it, but they didn't know it. He got married. He lived this life, of secrecy. It's the end of the story. I mean, he wasn't very particularly interesting.
I see.
To play, although we had similarities. But I felt that the people who surrounded him, this sort of crazy manager agent who changed his name and a lot of names of other stars, he was behind him. And then, there were, get ready, speech teachers to lower his voice, etc. So I created a character which was his speech teacher. I created that pretty much from cloth, but it believe me,
but there was
people
one.
believed
right.
Oh,
yes.
there was one.
Yes.
It existed.
Yeah.
And then I played Marilyn, who has a conversation with him about their successes and how they're both, sort of in tandem, were made fun of and jokes and tried to rise above that. And that was a inspired character.
So when you played her, was it in costume?
Nothing.
No. So but you would assume these mannerisms and voices. And, Scotty and I watched this series. Was it called Hollywoodland, hon?
It was called Hollywood, actually.
Okay. And did you see that?
I saw a few minutes of it. Was it that guy who does everything? What's his?
It was about a film that wanted filmmakers who wanted to make a film in the 50s. And yes,
keep going.
It's Ryan Murphy.
Right, Ryan Murphy. That's what I was trying to think.
Yeah, and he is the guy that does everything.
That's what I meant.
Right, even more than what's the guy who does New Year's Eve every year?
Dick Clark?
No, it's a new one.
I was like, that guy does it he's still doing it.
No, he's with Kelly Ripa. Why can't I remember his name?
Is it her husband?
No.
Michael Strayhorn?
Don't look at me. You know how I am.
I'm so looking at you. Anyway, it'll come back to me. But yeah, Ryan Murphy produced it, and Rock is a huge character in it, and they show his story.
Yeah, it's actually the first time I really understood the story as the way you're telling it.
It may be the first time they told it.
Yeah.
With any degree of, or with a degree of honesty.
There is a degree of honesty with it, for sure.
Well, that Hollywood colludes on these things. I mean, in other words, if there's some myth that's created by Rock, the manager, a few other people, Hollywood will just swallow that, and then they say the same things.
Right.
They're not factual.
Exactly.
They're all in some big collusion to protect each other.
So I just thought, I read that you had done that show, and I was just fascinated because, this had gone from being like what they had termed the gay cancer, right, to being a disease that people understood more about, but not all, and were still desperately afraid of. And it was deeply, and is still deeply, stigmatized, right?
Absolutely.
And you were able to see, well, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but what it seemed like was you wanted to tell this story because he was a victim.
He was a victim.
Right? But you are not.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's the distinguishing quality,
right,
of feature or whatever of the two stories.
Yes.
That's where they don't intersect.
Right.
And I was, again, I was lucky in certain respects. I guess it seems hard to, but I was lucky that I could express that in my physical and vocal and energetic self.
Yes.
That I could summon all that and put on that show. It was I'm really proud of that show.
Yeah,
know,
it was very well reviewed.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
It was a lot of praise for that show.
Yeah.
You might have to reprise it.
I know. I've thought of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it would hold, as a piece of history.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about taking care of. So you've gone from HIV positive to having AIDS. When did that happen?
I don't. It's gonna be funny. I don't think I have an AIDS diagnosis.
So
I'm still.
You're still HIV positive.
Yeah. I guess somewhere along the line, it used to be that if you had less than X number of T cells, it was it. So I probably had one along the way, but I should have had a press conference that day.
Right. Like others have.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're HIV positive, you're living with it, you're okay. I know you're okay now. I'm just going back to then. But you had friends that weren't okay, that were living with it. Talk to me about taking care of them and what that was like for you. Or not just friends, people that were close to you.
Well, it seemed to be from the beginning of the 80s through most of the 90s. That's a long stretch. And I took care of a lot of people. I mean, I think that it's totally made me who I am. I mean, I at one point I was with an ex-lover who was a sort of a known actor in town and blah, 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 blah. And I remember taking care of him. His mother was there, and I took care of him once a week. I'd come once every Wednesday, actually, any Wednesday. I'd come and I'd spend the night, and he jokingly said, in the height of dimensions, he said, well, you've finally figured out ways to sleep all night with me. I said, yes, I have.
Yeah, that's one of those sparks, right?
Exactly, that came out.
Yeah.
I said, yes, I have.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I remember once going to get him something and walking out of his apartment and going down on Santa Monica Boulevard to get him some bagels or something. Of course, he didn't want them by the time I got back. They had these whims. But I would go get it, and I was thinking, I was watching myself, and I thought, who is this guy who can do all this, who can deal with all the horror of taking care of him, and then can selflessly go get bagels and just do all the attendant things. I thought, who is he? And I was happy to be him. And so that sort of I have these moments, don't I, where that solidified that feeling of being able to take care of someone. Of course, he was a special case. They weren't all as intimate but they were. I would take care of people that other people had a hard time with.
Yeah. Wow. And so there was self-esteem there because you liked yourself.
Yeah.
You liked yourself that you were
able to do that. And, I was able to utilize Miss Epstein's empathy lessons more than ever.
Oh, wow.
So it all kind of worked together because I was still working. I was still acting.
Yeah.
And I never was not acting. I was never not acting and then writing to sort it all out.
Right.
I had to find a way to make sense of AIDS. And I think I did here and there, but I don't know that it makes any sense now. It's like COVID. What sense can it possibly make?
Right.
I mean, that these numbers of people are dying the way they are. It just is
right.
Nonsensical.
No.
Ridiculous.
It doesn't make any sense. And to have such a distinct portion of the population with HIV and AIDS that seem to be, obviously it's spread now to people through blood transfusions, et cetera, outside of the gay population. But that just felt like, for me, like, why is this happening? I don't understand. I don't understand what purpose this could. Why has it come up now? I think I told you my dad is Dr. Ronald Cathcart. He likes me to say his name.
Shout out.
Shout out to
Dad.
Dr. Ronald Cathcart.
Good, yay!
He's been on the show too.
He has been on the
Yeah.
show, and he's been an HIV/AIDS doctor since 1987 or 88. I had the year wrong last time, so forgive me, Dad, if I got it wrong again. But for a while, he ran the largest in-house care facility for AIDS patients in Fort Lauderdale. That's where he lives. And he lives in Florida. He lives in Melbourne now, and he runs an AIDS clinic now, an HIV and AIDS clinic now. And he told me the whole story of the origin and how it started, and like exactly, you know, not the person's name, but the times and points of origin and how it came to be. It's also random. So random. You know, the connection between Haiti and Canada, and, you know, and then how it spread. And it's just, that didn't make any sense anyway, but it's amazing that it spread to where it is from those small random points, and then beginning, you know, possibly in Africa with those tests with the primates. And
Right.
So,
but very random.
Very
And,
random.
Like, how could we ascribe any guilt or shame to it? Which is what was, people just were able to do that with such
right.
venom and
Absolutely.
hatred. And,
Yeah. So did you get treatment when you were younger?
I mean, I've been on protease inhibitors. I was not a big AZT taker, and I just intuitively didn't like it and didn't take it. Thank God.
Yeah.
So I just resisted it, and that was. I mean, I took it, but I took like half the dosage, and it didn't affect me. So I got through that.
Good.
Then
yeah,
came
thank goodness.
protease inhibitors, and I've been on some version of those since the mid-90s.
Amazing. I mean, and
I'm an exception to the.
You are an exception. I mean, it's just. Do you mind saying your age, or do you not like?
I don't
do
mind
that?
at all. 72. I just turned
72
a week ago, I think. Yeah.
And I would imagine that you lost a lot of your friends at age 30, 40, like somewhere in there.
I mean, that almost seems like a different life. It almost seems like that was a different world I inhabited. And now that world is much thinner. I mean, there are fewer close relationships like those that were founded and nurtured through my 20s and into my 30s. You have a hard time then rebonding and getting close again, and then that person dies, and then you try it again, and that person dies.
Yeah.
So, and this, of course, COVID doesn't help that lack of connection.
Oh, no. It's
Now people are afraid all over again.
all over again. And everybody is afraid.
Every single person,
Of every person
on the planet.
Yeah, I mean, my instinct when I saw you when you came in was to hug you, but because of COVID protocol, I don't know if that's allowed or we're supposed to. I'm a hugger.
Hate it, me too.
Yeah.
So you can hug me.
I'm gonna hug you when we leave.
Good.
Okay.
I'm fine. I'll take that risk.
Okay.
I mean, it's true though. I guess it is a risk. I don't know. Is it?
Yeah. I mean, we talked about this. We're
Yeah, I
all
am too.
triple vaccinated, and
so.
he tested this morning, and we test pretty regularly.
Yeah, I tested last week.
Yeah.
Well,
so-
no, 2 days ago I tested.
Okay. So we're probably as safe as we can be at this point. but
Exactly.
We don't know if that's enough.
No, we don't.
You know.
Which, it parallels for all those years. There were all kinds of rules about what to do sexually.
Yes.
But none of them were founded in anything.
No.
Other
Fear.
than fear.
Yeah.
That's right. So
Yeah.
nobody knew what the rules were.
Right.
We say, well, you're practicing safe sex. Well, what is it? What is safe sex?
Yeah.
Give me a prescription.
Right.
Because it varies greatly,
does.
greatly.
And what are we even protecting ourselves from? We don't know, right? Like what part of intimacy is the thing that passes it? And people didn't know that.
No.
People thought it was handshaking or kissing or,
Right, exactly.
Now we know it's bodily fluid to bodily fluid contact.
Yes. But that took a long time.
A long
And
time.
a long time
And a
to
lot of
get
convincing.
that mindset.
Yes.
And also, I don't want to we don't have to get into this too. We don't have time, but I'll come back.
You will come back.
Is just the hardcore sexual practices of gay men that are like she and her and girl.
Yeah.
Using that language, certain things were eroticizing to gay men that aren't necessarily to, obviously, straight men, but to women. So you have to inform people of that. And they can be empathetic or not.
Yeah.
But if you say, well, this is part of gay sex, is taking in sperm, that's part of the eroticism of it.
Yes.
And you're telling me to stop that?
Yes.
Why don't you try stopping some things?
Right. Yeah. It's all kinds of unfair, right? All kinds of
and you have
unjust.
to stretch your brain and to understand and empathize and listen and not judge.
Yeah.
That's the big thing.
Do we have 5 minutes?
Yeah, we
Okay.
do. Just about 8, actually.
Oh, good. Thank you for all of that. Thank you for all of that. This has been such an amazing talk. I'm so excited that we got to do this and do it in person. But there's one more thing I wanted to ask you about, and that's your daughter, Catherine. Can I say her name?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Your daughter, Catherine, because I just think this is an amazing story in and of itself. You just heard you have 8 minutes to tell it. But she's
I can tell it.
Yeah, she's your adopted daughter.
Mm-hmm.
She happens to be Black.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to let you take it from there.
Well, I had a lover die in 92, and at that point I was doing Camille at Highways, and things were going well in that area, and I toured, and so I sort of looked at my life when he died, and he left me a little money, and I thought, what am I going to do? Am I going to travel? Am I going to pursue another show? Am I going to? But it just kept coming back to, you've got to be a father. You've got to be a father. You've got to be a father. That's what's missing. That's the big hole that needs filling in who you are. Because I had thought of it for years and just said it was impossible. So I decided then it was not impossible. This was pre-protease inhibitors, etc. So I started doing all the things one would do, trying to do a weekend thing, trying to do lesbians who had a child that they wanted a male influence, blah, blah, blah. But it kept coming back to, no, I want a child in my house day to day forever, or as long as it's turning out to be forever.
Yeah.
So that happened 27 years ago, and she came to me as a foster situation, which is what they were doing in those days, and they would give those foster situations to the least desirable adopters.
Yes.
Yeah, and of course, so gays and lesbians got the kids that were not wanted. And Black and brown babies were not wanted.
Are not wanted.
Period,
Yes.
still.
Yes.
So they gave them to us. I was fine with that. I said I didn't care what disease, what illness, what anything, and I got Catherine, who is a prize. And she has been with me ever since. I got her at 5 months. She had a little bumpy beginning there, but then got on track. And she's very successful. She's a writer, and she's just doing amazingly well. That doesn't mean, contrary to Amy Simple McPherson or whatever her name is, that court judge who said, oh, well, they should just go out and adopt if they give me a break.
Yeah.
Adoption is a complicated
Yes.
proposition,
Yes.
and it requires a lot of work. And then my work was cut out for me because I had to learn to be a scholar in Black studies.
Yes, you did. It's a whole nother culture to learn, right?
And I did.
You did.
Well, I've tried. I've done pretty well, I think. She jokingly now says he's read more books than I have about Black.
Right.
But I have read a lot, and really, I had to dive in. I couldn't not. I didn't anticipate all that. I anticipated I'd read a few Martin Luther King children's books.
Right.
And that would be it. Done. Okay, we accomplished that. Oh, no, it's day to day.
Yeah.
It's every day. And especially in the last couple of years where it's been so part of the news and the psyche of the country and her. And, it became dangerous for her to walk on the street alone. If it not still is, maybe. It's scary. It's just scary to be a Black woman, as I don't have to tell you, in this society and country. And so I've learned a lot about that in the last 30 years or so, not
Yeah.
quite 30, I've really learned and have put that in my work too.
Tell me about going to the DMV with her.
You might have to help me. The woman was insistent to know her mother,
Right.
and
You were taking her, right?
I was taking her to
yes.
get a license or
Yes,
to
yeah.
transfer some paperwork or something.
Yeah.
And the woman, who happened to be a black woman, I'm just saying that as a fact.
Yeah.
And she was, well, where's the mother? I said, well, there is no mother. No. I have to have the name of the mother. I said, no, there's no mother on record. And this just went on and on and on. And was there a punchline? You might know it better than I do. I think
No, but just
it was shocking.
Yeah.
I mean, and she experienced. It was good. She was experiencing it in a way because she saw how the racism was in my direction too.
Yes.
And it often was. I mean,
Right.
I was often a victim of the racism, which is far worse for her than me. I'm not suggesting that.
Yeah.
But I was the recipient. I was a recipient
Yeah.
of racism in subtle ways, that being one of them. She just refused to believe there was no mother. She refused to believe it. I said, there is no mother. I can't make up a name. It's not part of the equation here.
Yeah.
She's adopted. She's a single parent adoption. I mean, she'd never heard of this before.
Isn't it amazing? My kids were on a basketball team when they were younger, and there was a biracial black kid on the team with them, and his white dad would often sit in the stands with me. And one day his other white dad showed up to pick him up, and he told the coach, "Hi, I'm so-and-so's father." And the coach, who was this big black guy, said, "No, you're not." And he says, "Yeah, I am." He goes, "No, I've met his father. You're not him." And I'm hearing this and running over to intervene.
Good for you.
And to say, "No, this is so-and-so's other father," and introducing them. But
Did he get it?
he got it, but he was not happy about it. He was not happy about it, and you could see it. And I was so hurt by that. They were actually okay, probably not their first encounter with it. Nor was the kid. The kid seemed to be okay with
Really?
it.
The kid was okay too.
Yeah, but it was, for me, I was just shocked that this wasn't in private. This was in the gym after practice, and there were a lot of people around, including me.
And we say that the kid was okay. But
Right. He
is he
seemed
okay?
okay
He seems
at the
okay.
moment.
Yeah, I mean, how many of those experiences does
Right,
he
and
have
they
where
pile
one
on.
of them's not okay?
Right.
And then I
Yeah.
could see, I would rationalize it. Catherine was okay. She was,
Right.
she's okay. She's with the race. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, and so much has to be compartmentalized and internalized in order to just, go out into the world and be kind of just, not even just productive, but just to be out in the world.
period.
And for you as well,
Yeah.
right? You have to continue to show up, do these dad things, the things that dads do, regardless of how you're treated.
That's
So,
right.
I just loved that you have a black daughter and that you raised
do
her as a
too.
single white gay dad. And I know there's a stigma. I wanted to talk about that, but we're basically
There
out of
is a
time.
stigma. I think it's
Yeah.
worse now in a way
Yeah.
than it was even 5 years ago or 10 years ago.
Yeah,
I
it's-
just think their lines are being drawn now. They're not all good.
Well, yes, there was an event in 2016 that kind of brought people out of the woodwork.
Yes.
And allowed them to say things that were not part of normal, typical conversations. Bad manners.
It's very
Bad
difficult.
manners. Yes. Thank you for this.
Thank
This has
you.
been amazing.
Thank
What a
you.
journey you took us on. From St.
Well-
Louis to Los Angeles via Chicago, and
You helped, believe me. If I'd been left to my own devices, I'd still be in St. Louis singing Chattanooga Choo Choo.
That's pretty cute, though.
Yeah,
I would be down with that.
I would be down with that too.
Uh-huh.
Tell me, Michael, where can people find you?
At my website, I think, is www.michaelkearns something.
I think it's michaelkearns.com, but
Or
if
it's
it's
michaelkearns.co, I think.
okay,
It's some
it'll be in the
quirky-
show notes of
Good,
this
good.
episode, so you just need to click on it and you
That's
can go
your best way.
right to you. And are you on social media?
Yeah.
You're at Michael
Facebook.
Kearns. Yeah.
It's some version of Michael Kearns.
Yeah.
Facebook and Instagram.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. On the gram. I think I found you on there. Well, that is it for us. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you. Hi, I'm Michael Kearns, and I am the first actor in Hollywood to come out as openly gay.